fucks up. Because Peppa's here.
Hey everyone, it's Jack. That queen right there is Black Peppa. And whenever I think back to Drag Race UK 4, specifically the premiere, I think of only her. Though there were some other queens that I think did a really good job this episode, like Sminty Drop, Black Peppa's performance is one of the most dominant I've seen on the show. The entrance, as we just saw, was an all-timer. She went straight into winning the mini challenge, and then she won the maxi challenge at the end. And the entire time, she was giving us some pretty insane looks. And though she did end up struggling for the rest of the season, you understand why they were so infatuated with her. In a single episode, she really sold who she was in a really high fashion way. It was an extremely dominant challenge performance, and that's what I want to talk about today. I'm going to run through some of the most dominant challenge performances on Drag Race, and I feel like this could easily be a series because I know there's a ton of those episodes out there. If you like my content, make sure you like and subscribe. Only a small portion of you are. And let's start off with the one and only season 13, a season that I have been talking about a lot in the recent videos. With all things considered, I honestly think RuPaul Marks is not a terrible first acting challenge, and a lot of that is to do with Symone's performance in this episode. We saw that Symone was in the top for episode 2 and won her lip sync back in episode 1. We saw that she was very charming, had a really good personality, but a charming personality doesn't always translate to the challenges, especially a challenge like acting where you have to follow a script. But by the first rehearsal, the first line that she says, we see that she is swinging for the fences and the people are loving it. Her performance in this acting challenge shows exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to these scripts. The writing may not be the funniest thing in the world, but if someone knows how to flip it and change it into something that makes it their own, they're gonna find a lot of success with it. And it could be down to just a single word. Victory. Flag victory. Am I saying that right? I don't know.
Correction. I own 51% of the flag victory. And the only reason I came back is to shut it down.
That single inflection of the word tells you everything that you need to know about Symone's character, how she's playing this performance. And I think this was the first sign in many signs that Symone was going to be a frontrunner on the season. I did like Symone's runways in the first couple episodes. They were all extremely different from one another, but I feel like in this episode, she solidifies that she also is an insane runway queen with a really great eye. She turned that corner in the do-rag look and basically made Drag Race history. This is such a defining look of the season and one of my favorite looks of all time. No one got a bigger laugh in the room, and she had one of the strongest runways of the night. This is like textbook dominant performance. I also want to mention Symone and Utica's makeover in this section as well. Now, I don't think this is as dominant as Symone was in the acting challenge, but I do think that their storyline in this episode was really interesting. The reason I don't think it was as dominant is because Candy and Mick did good in the challenge as well, and I feel like there could have been a justification for their win. I just think there was much more focus on Symone and Utica this episode, with there also being a lot of focus on Tina and Rosé, but we saw how that turned out. The stark difference between Symone and Utica's drag made it really interesting to see how it was going to come together. They're both queens that are very devoted to their messages and their concepts, so that's where they align, but their messages and concepts were extremely different. Utica is all about expression of abstract art, while Symone is very pro-black and loving being black. So to see them have to switch, especially with Utica, who has been very conscious not to offend anyone, so much so that, I mean, we saw the wig in Snatch Game, like what was that? It just all created a really interesting message about paying tribute to a community that isn't your own, but doing it in a respectful way. I said in my last video that I think this should have been one of the lowest ranked episodes ever. I do kind of want to take that back because I think the judging was really bad this episode, but we got the storyline out of it, so I think it's a net positive. And let's jump back just a couple of years to All-Star 7 episode 1. This right here was Shea Coulee's episode, and I feel like a lot of the people in the season knew it too. She was the first one back into the workroom with an incredible look, and there was a special guest this episode that you could say was an inspiration to Shea. Supermodel Naomi Campbell just decides to pop on the main stage, you know, as she does, and she's left such a great impression on Shea over the years. I mean, we've seen Shea pay tribute to Naomi back in season 9. So when she walks out and we see Shea freak out, that's already dream come true number 1. She met Naomi Campbell. But then they each get their runway walk critiqued by Naomi, and she says this to Shea.
You know what you're doing, you have it controlled, you know how to slow it down, to bring it up to... It was perfection for me.
Wow.
It's so cool to see someone be so validated in a moment, especially a queer person. It really feels like all of Shea's dreams are coming true, and she was able to do that by coming back to All-Star 7. Having Naomi in this first episode and then Vanna White in the next episode for the ball, it gave me such a high impression of what I thought All-Star 7 was gonna be. And there were some more special moments on the season as it went on. It just started to fall back into the regular Drag Race groove at some points, and I don't think that's good for all winners. I'm getting sidetracked. Naomi being here though was super cool, and I have to think that Shea Shea was a big part of them trying to get her, especially when you see a moment like this and how validating it was to a person. Going slightly off track again, I also really loved when the showrunners surprised Pheromone with Christina Aguilera. It's the type of thing where the showrunners don't have to be doing this, but by having these big names on the show and acknowledging the queens who are really inspired by them, and then the show makes that connection, I just think that's a really cool thing that they do. Anyways, back to dominant challenge performances, we have Shea in the girl group giving one of the coolest verses ever. She already set the bar extremely high with her category Is verse, and though she unfortunately just had less time for this verse, I still think she did an incredible job with both the lyrics and the performance. Monet and Evie were really good in this challenge as well, but to me, when I think about Legends the song, I think of Shea's verse. And then we move to the runway where she's walking in Valentino. Even if it wasn't designer, I mean, just look at the material. It's high concept, it's breathtaking, and it's something that I could stare at for hours. But then we get another mark of versatility when she does comedy for the lip sync. This version of Old MacDonald for lip sync song is so perfect, and it's one of my favorite lip syncs of the season. I do think Monet did a really good job in this lip sync as well. But after the momentum that Shea built up in this episode and just another killer lip sync performance, her winning at the end was so satisfying. Smelling good is extremely important to me because it's a big first impression a lot of the time. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, Scentbird. Scentbird is a subscription service that sends you colognes and perfumes to your door each month. And I've been lucky to partner with Scentbird many times over the past couple of years, and some of the scents that they sent me I've kept till today, whether I get another 30-day vial from Scentbird or I go out and buy a bigger version of the bottle. You can go on their website and research the various fragrances that they have. It tells you like the notes of each fragrance. Super informative and intuitive. One of the best things about Scentbird is that you're able to switch up your scent each month without committing to a full-on bottle. They have over 700 fragrances from brands like Prada and Versace, or there's also more indie brands like Confessions of a Rebel. This month I was able to try Intense by Issey Miyake. This one's definitely unique. It has a lot of citrus to it, which I'm not really used to, but I did enjoy it. A scent from Vince Camuto for men. This is like the signature cologne smell that I would think of. Very fresh smelling, but not too intense. There's a really good balance. Mitchell Germain's Duville, another super fresh smelling one with notes of water in it that really bring the entire scent together. Tonstrina 367 by Pisterzi. One of the major notes in this one is cinnamon, and I definitely smell it, and I think it's just overall a really underrated scent. The scents are shipped in these really high quality vials. They're really perfect for on-the-go travel. Like when I have to go through an airport, I'm never worried that this is going to make it through security. It's easy to pop in your bag, keep it in your car, just all around really easy to transport. You can start your scent journey for just $8 a month for your first month, and then continue to explore your scents for $16.95 a month. If you're interested in trying Scentbird, I have a special offer for you. Scan the QR code or use JackFed 55 off to get 55% off your first month of Scentbird. Don't miss your chance to score on this amazing deal. Thank you so much to Scentbird, and now let's get back to the video. Let's talk about another all-star season with a girl group performance where Monet was in the top, but we're not talking about her. Valentina on All Stars 4 episode 2 got the ultimate redemption from her season 9 performance. Again, I will say Monet had a really catchy verse, but the group that Valentina was in was stronger, and she was also the standout of that group as well. She commanded the stage and had a verse with really great lyricism in 2 different languages, and just the way that her voice sounds on the verse, it gets me every time. It's one of my favorite verses ever. For All Stars performances, I think what adds an extra layer of dominance in an episode would be the lip sync, like I just talked about with Shea. And it's true again here with Valentina because this is the Into You lip sync. For the few who don't know, on season 9, Valentina was one of the fan favorites, but she went out at a shocking point in the competition because she landed in the bottom and didn't know the words to an Ariana Grande song, Greedy. In the moment, she tried to defend herself, but it just didn't end up well, and her elimination felt shocking and kind of put a damper on her run in the competition. So lo and behold, the first time that she's in the top for All Stars 4, it just happens to be an Ariana Grande song. And regardless of the past in season 9, I mean, she just turned this lip sync out. I know in my heart of hearts that all of the Valentina stans felt so validated in this moment. She was able to redeem herself from her past mistakes and kind of scrub the timeline clean. Let's talk about 2 dominant challenge performances from the same queen, Lady Camden. I've done a full video on Lady Camden and her storyline, but I often say that she had very special episodes. A lot of the time, I feel like she was taking a back seat in the storylines of the season, except random points in the season she would have a really standout performance. The first was in Daytona Wins, where again, she was one of the few to take the script and make it her own, especially since that script was kind of meant to be not super funny because all of the punchlines were the fart jokes that were edited in. But I think her performance out of all of them was the most entertaining if the edits just happened happened to not be present. She stole basically every scene that she was in and didn't fall victim to having a big role and folding under the pressure. But what I really want to talk about with this week, of course, is the runway presentation. This was the week that she fell. She fell hard.
Oh, she fell. And she fell hard, bitch.
But when she got back up, it turned out to be a stunt. It was all a tribute to Freddie Mercury, and it's one of the coolest runways in the episode. This moment was the moment that all eyes were on Lady Camden going forward in the competition. She had a great challenge performance, and I think that she was gonna win regardless, but when she pulled this out, I think they were like, oh, there is something there. It was exciting, and it played with something that was so normal on Drag Race. It's a moment that sticks with you and dominates your brain. But we're not done, because this is a top 2 lip sync episode, and have you ever seen a performer in their element? You can truly see the fun that she was having on the stage. Like, yes, she was fighting for the win, but I think she was really running on that high of just getting these really great critiques, and it helped in the performance. Not to mention, mustache reveal, like, are you kidding me? Moulin Rouge is the next episode, and it's just an absolute banger from start to finish. Bosco and Lady Camden get into it. Camden gets upset because she didn't get the role that she wanted, instead ended up with a role that no one in the show wanted at all. But I mean, we've seen her perform, we saw her just win that lip sync and also win an acting challenge, so I feel like she could turn any role that she gets in a musical, and I feel like she noticed that pretty quickly. Saltine is the main character of the show, but I feel like Mama Z guides just as much of the show as well, so she basically just had to outperform Bosco in this role. And in general, everyone did a really great job, but Camden was definitely the standout. Like I said with the top 2 lip sync, this is just Camden's stage. She was a professional ballerina, she knows the arts really well, and I feel like anytime she was given a chance to shine in an artsy performance, she nailed it. She had the judges giving her probably the best praise they could, saying she could perform on Broadway with this performance. And I want to say I agree with them, like she has the training for it.
Couldn't take my eyes off of Lady Camden. Wove the whole story together like a master seamstress.
She performs at such a high level, she probably would have been great at Saltine or any character she would have played.
Lady Camden could do that on Broadway in Moulin Rouge, the musical.
It's crazy how much she was a black sheep on season 14, and by the end she was tied with the most wins. I really do want to see her back in the future. And while we're on the topic of season 14, I'll briefly mention Deja Skye, who gave a wonderful performance in Snatch Game. If there were more good performances in the Snatch Game, I still think Deja would have won. It's cause her character choice of Lil Jon was just smart. I talk about this a lot, but I feel like Snatch Game character choices have been really interesting as of recent. I truly think that anyone can make anything work on Snatch Game, but I feel like the thinking is really out of the box right now, and as a result, the choices end up disadvantaging the queens. So why not pick someone like Lil Jon who has a ton of quotable lines right off the bat and then work off of that? Deja was just giving herself a leg up because you already know so many things that Lil Jon says. If she didn't have a funny exact answer, she could just say a quote. I think we see the most failure when someone picks a celebrity that is really charismatic online or charismatic in interviews. Like just this past week on Canada vs. the World, we saw Tabitha Brown for the second time. I love her content, I vibe with her as a person, but it's just hard to make a cool person into a really off-the-wall character that's fit for Snatch Game. So I feel like people should follow the model that Deja has proved to be successful. And let's hop across the pond and talk about another Snatch Game of a very notable figure, Bimini Bon Boulash playing Katie Price. I forgot how good this performance was. And watching the Snatch Game back, I don't want to say it's the only good performance, but it is just leagues above anything else in the room. The way they characterized Katie Price through her iconic voice and her iconic stories, they had the perfect balance of notable quotes that they could work off of, but again, there were a ton of things that they said in the Snatch Game that were brand new and hilarious. Katie Price again is just a character that you know right off the bat for just how she sounds.
As you know, Rue, you might have heard in the press.
So when Bimini was able to get that down right away, it created a foundation for one of the best Snatch Game performances ever. And then we get to the prehistoric runway where they're in this petri dish look, one of the coolest concepts that I don't think anyone would really think of for a prehistoric runway. The contacts, the way that they walk, the silhouette of the outfit, it is just so interesting to look at. I really miss all of the UK2 girls on my screen, and I'm so happy Tia came back, but the fact that she is the only one to have come back is criminal. One thing that I'm sad about is the fact that the only reverse curse that there's been was finally broken this year with season 16. For the 3 years that it was present, if you were to win a political challenge on Drag Race, you were gonna win the crown. It happened with Sharon, Bob, and Jaida, and then Sapphira was the one to win the challenge on season 16. And though Sapphira didn't win the crown, she dominated this challenge. It was a pretty hard assignment to write a verse that hit all of the bases that they were looking for. These queens are thrown onto a platform and are immediately told to become like an emblem for the show, for queer art, all of that. And it's just not easy to come out of the woodwork and immediately be a spokesperson and write a verse that resonates with a ton of people. But I think out of all of the verses, Sapphira hit most, if not all, of the bases, and just had a really powerful message behind what she was saying. To me, this challenge performance is her defining moment of the season, and I think the runway was a beautiful complement to this challenge. When it comes to runways, 16 is up there with some of the best other seasons. And week after week, I thought Sapphira really turned it, and this is one of my favorite looks from her. It was a top 2, and I do think Morphine did a great job, but if there was just a solo win and it was an Elim episode, I definitely think it would have gone to Sapphira. The true crime of this episode, what keeps it from being perfect, is the fact that they had to lip sync to Made You look. And while we're on the topic of political challenges, let's talk about Jaida. I don't think there's been anything as quotable as look over there in an improv challenge, and she was able to take any signs of struggling or not having an answer and turning it into pretty spot on political commentary. The fact that sometimes politicians don't have an answer or don't want to give the correct answer and instead they just try to distract, that's basically what Jaida's doing here. Confusion. The chaos of this challenge is something that I could definitely watch forever. Like when Gigi is walking across the floor and everyone's making the commentary, and then there's the retittle of the rebuttal. Jaida served as the most grounding, best performance, but also the performance that was causing the most chaos. And then when she walked the runway in that superhero outfit, it was just hers for the taking. It was so good. I recently did one of the Chicago edits to We Both Reach for the Gun with Alyssa and Coco. It's on my shorts page, you can go check it out. I really love that trend. But it got me thinking about Black Swan and how no one was ever going to beat Alyssa when it came to the winner of this challenge. And I just want to talk about Alyssa because she's back for Global, and I'm just really happy to see her back. The way the role shook down would not happen the same way today. Giving the professional dancer the titular role of the show, like you just want to hand her the win. I don't know if the queens felt it or not, but the entire episode was just based around Coco and Alyssa and their struggle and their storyline, and it was just so perfect, like almost too perfect. But the second that the act starts and she looks up and she just looks mesmerizing, it was so clear that she was getting this win. And speaking of season 5 contestants who came back for a recent All-Star season, Roxxxy Andrews and the lip sync Lollapalooza was also incredible. Chanel being in the top 2, I think she was great. She did a great job. But once we knew that final song was Break Free, I knew that Roxxxy was going to take it. After a season, not even a season, like spanning across multiple seasons of never dropping a lip sync, being I want to say 7-0 at that point, I'm gonna make a full video on this, there would be no one else in the world that I would think would be more dominant in a lip sync Lollapalooza than Roxxxy Andrews. The hair she was whipping around in every lip sync, the diversity of the performances, she just puts on a show every time, and she is just classic drag. And lastly, I'll touch on another pair from All Stars 9, Mick and Plastique, being the top 2 queens for the ball. I'll say again, shout out to Chanel, loved her second look, shout out to Roxxxy, also loved her second look, but Mick and Plastique, I loved all 6 of their looks so much. When you look at Mick's second look or Plastique's third look, like how are you supposed to compete with that? There was just a clear top 2 and a pretty sizable gap between the other people who were in the top. And I'm so glad that that runway eye candy persisted for the entire season. I think that's all the people that I wanted to cover in this first video, but comment below some other people because I definitely know there's more. It's really cool to see a toss-up between multiple queens and who's gonna win a challenge, but even if it's sometimes obvious, it's also cool to see when someone's just given their flowers because their performance was just the best of the best. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I just wanted to give one more shout out to Scentbird. You can scan my QR code or use JackFed 55 off. It's a really cool service, definitely has helped me pick out some scents over the years, and I would highly recommend it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon with another video.